Hi, Rabbi Cooper. Good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, Kidaway. Good to see you again.
Well, each time we speak, we have the big news, and this time it's the Japanese Prime Minister resigned, and so we will have a new Prime Minister in a few weeks. So whoever will be chosen, what do you want to see happen for the new Japanese administration? Policy toward the Middle East, especially Israel and Palestinians, and maybe Iran.
Right. So first, we, of course, hope that Prime Minister Abe will fully recover his health in the future when he's out of office.
Mm-hmm.
And also grateful for the steps that he took, the visit to Israel, his speech at Yad Vashem about memory, and of course, finally, the opening of the gates of Japanese business people coming to Israel. Some dynamic things have been taking place. The new prime minister is going to have plenty on his plate. I'm not an expert on domestic issues, but in terms of the Middle East, and of course now with the UAE-Israel piece, Japan can play a role in helping to continue the momentum to normalize relationships between the Arab countries and Israel, and especially trying to strengthen the moderates within the Palestinian community who right now have no voice, not with the corrupt PA, not with Hamas. Japan has leverage because of the financial help it gives to the Palestinians.
Right.
That includes in terms of UNRWA, the curriculum that needs to be corrected. We hope that the new prime minister will bring in a kind of new attitude to try to bring Japanese foreign policy in terms of the Holy Land into the 21st century. Right now, it's very much seems in the hands of bureaucrats at the foreign ministry, and they're stuck somewhere in the 1980s. One other thing is that there have been some significant moves that do impact on Japan. That's, of course, been the horrific behavior of the Chinese government in terms of human rights vis-a-vis the Uyghurs, vis-a-vis Hong Kong, vis-a-vis Christian churches. That is raised concerns all over the world, but also the strategic deal it is now made with Iran. And that puts China and Iran, two opponents of the United States, together in one camp. It will make it more difficult for Japan to sort of trying to maintain great relations with America and continue so-called historic relations with Iran. I believe that the new prime minister may be forced to choose between those relationships. And I think there's no question that they need to choose the US, and that'll have an impact on bilateral relations with China.
I see. So, well, we have to see, but I think your position is very clear that you want to see happen those changes. And maybe we should talk about this recent event. Well, incident itself took place 3 years ago, but the report came out recently that there was an event where Nazi flags were shown, and you tweeted about that incident, and I have your sentence. So you said it slammed the memory of the Nazi victims, and you've been working on this for almost 30 years on Japanese related incidents. Every time you protest, you went and tried to educate, but still it keeps happening. And it's hard to explain why it happens, but what do you think it's the reason why it keeps happening?
Well, in terms of this particular incident, I understand this person is the kingpin of pornography and other, kinds of activities that make him very powerful, very rich, very connected, so that maybe he feels complete immunity from whatever he decides to do. He'll never be brought into court or even the court of public opinion for anything that he doesn't really care. And maybe this was his way of exhibiting that he can do anything he wants and get away with it. What's troubling? It took 3 years, despite the fact that there were probably hundreds of people, from those who participated to caterers to florists, who knew about it in real time and apparently said nothing. And now that this issue came out, and of course was significantly covered, especially in Germany, and in the world of social media, unless I'm wrong, we haven't heard one word from anybody in Japan about this outrage. And there's no more excuses about before the internet, well, Japan's an island nation and it doesn't have access to information. There are great books about the Holocaust. They're now available in Japanese. Our exhibition, Courage to Remember, has been seen by 3 million people. I guess the younger generation in Japan and elsewhere don't necessarily connect to the events of their previous generation and the previous century. And if they do, they don't necessarily understand the pernicious nature of the Nazi regime, even though they were allies with Imperial Japan, and the evil that the swastika represents both to the victims of the Nazis and today to people of color and minorities all over the world. Japanese tourists, if they get into the wrong location in the United States or the UK with people with swastikas, they'll be attacked because they're fundamentally racist. So to see again the disconnect, not a statement, not from a political observer, not from an op-ed writer, not from a blogger, nothing. It is disturbing, and I think it maybe proves a point that this man was making. That I guess if you have enough money, you can get away with anything in terms of personal responsibility, and that's a shameful thing that he did. But the silence following it is a shameful statement about Japan. I'm afraid that's just the truth.
I see. Yeah. Well, I read the article by German media, and it made Japan look so bad. And I think the Japanese people, I don't know how much they realize, those who are silent. And I hope this is another waking moment that for them to be silent is almost like admitting that they don't object to that kind of behavior.
Well, that's especially, that incident in which, I don't know if perhaps there were more than one, but for sure there was one time in which I understand that young Japanese currently occasionally come to the shrine in Tokyo, memorializing the soldiers who were killed during World War II, wearing the uniform of the Imperial Japanese Army. And that at least one occasion, you had someone wearing the uniform of the Nazi SS. Now, I certainly hope that the silence over this incident doesn't indicate that there are people who identify with that very unfortunate and horrible alliance between Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany during World War II. But we've had plenty of time on both sides of the Pacific to learn the lessons from the Second World War. And there isn't anyone who has a computer today who doesn't know what the Nazi swastika stands for and how it's different from the traditional swastikas that go back thousands of years in South Asia, India, Hindu, and other cultures. The silence is troubling. And, perhaps as you talk about it as you communicate to people back in Japan, maybe they'll help explain to us why the silence.
I see. Well, you've been criticizing those incidents, but you also praise those who, came forward and speak against it. So next time some brave Japanese person criticize those kind of incidents, I hope you will praise that person.
Absolutely. I know that people, the Japanese people have their own way of dealing with issues. It doesn't always go on a straight line or in a timeline that we would appreciate. And I think there's one other point, which is that we're now at a turning point in history. The people who lived through the Second World War around the world are every day leaving the stage.
Yes.
It's in the rear view mirror of the older people and not really part of the overall understanding of most younger generations. We understand all of that. But when we want to make sure that as new generations are trying to understand what values from the earliest centuries young Japanese should take with them now with taking, leadership roles in Japanese society. We have to make sure that among the things they don't take are the militarism and the brutality of the Imperial Japanese Army during the 1930s and 40s. That's also something that's a much bigger issue than my area, and I hope that that's something that the Japanese, the older generation will help educate their own. I think the more they understand that, perhaps the more they'll understand why when they see a swastika or they see an attack against Koreans who were born in Japanese, why they should speak out and take action.
Okay, thank you. I hope majority of Japanese people will agree with you, although they tend to be silent. And okay,
we're counting on the people of Japan. It's a great democracy. Anybody who has any questions about who our closest friend is in Asia just has to look at the series of actions and policies that have been put in place by the Chinese Communist Party. As Americans, we're lucky to have a democratic Japan is our friend, ally, and economic partner in that part of the world.
Okay, with that, we will end this conversation. I'm sure we keep talking to each other. And until then, take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Kinoue.
Bye.